Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Muhammad Amir Khair bin Anasir, and today my group is presenting on speech analysis on Malaysian English for the subject of EPC530 English pronunciation in use. And today we are going to analyze Wan Mat Hazlin Agil Wan Hassan, the CEO of Maraliner, who's talking on BFM 89.9 Breakfast Grill podcast with the topic, Can Maraliner be both service and business? First of all, let me introduce my group. I am Muhammad Amir Khair bin Anasir, and we also have Ahmad Irfan bin Ahmad Fadilah, Muhammad Nur Alif bin Nur Wancik, and Izri Farhan bin Nasir, who will all be analysing Wan Agil's speech on the podcast. In this presentation, we are going to talk about the introduction and methodology, vowels analysis, consonants analysis, suprasegmental features, connected speech, and lastly, conclusion.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Azir Farhan. I'll be giving the introduction to our research participant, which is Wan Mat Hazlin Agil Wan Hassan. So he currently resides in Wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur. His personal qualifications is he's a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, or in short CILT. His current role is the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of Maraliner, where he has been in the position for around 4 months. His entrepreneurial background is he's the founder of Agil and Partners, which is a consultancy firm, and he's also the owner of My Mobility Vision and Urban Mobility. So his leadership background includes being a former chairperson for the UMNO Youth Club alumni overseas.
So, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Nur Alif bin Nur Wancik. So, before discussing further on our analysis, I would like to briefly introduce the history of Malaysian English. So, English was first introduced to Malaysia during the British colonial period, but even after Malaysia has gained independence, English continued to play an important role, especially in education, business, media, as well as professional communication. But over time, English evolved into its own local variety, known as Malaysian English, as highlighted by Rahim et al. 2021. Malaysian English is recognized as one of the world Englishes, meaning it is a legitimate variety of English rather than incorrect English. And since Malaysia is a multilingual country, Malaysian English has been influenced by languages such as Malay, Mandarin, Tamil, as well as other indigenous languages. These language influences contribute to its unique pronunciation and speaking style. And another important concept is the Malaysian English continuum, which consists of 3 varieties, the first one being acrolect. Acrolect is the variety that is the closest to standard British English and is commonly used in formal education and professional setting. And then Mesolect. Mesolect is the variety most educated Malaysians use in their everyday communication. And then the last one, Basilect. Basilect is the most informal variety and shows the strongest influence from local languages. Besides the history part, Malaysian English is also characterized by its unique pronunciation. These pronunciation patterns are mainly influenced by the Malay phonological system, which are quite different from English. Malaysian speakers often produce features such as vowel substitution, vowel shortening, as well as consonant cluster simplification. But although these pronunciation features are different from received pronunciation, researchers suggest that they generally do not affect intelligibility, as mentioned by Kamaruddin and Ahmad Kamal 2021. Instead, they represent the natural characteristics of Malaysian English. Therefore, this study was conducted with three objectives. First, to identify the pronunciation features produced by the guest speaker. Second, to compare those features with received pronunciation. And finally, to analyze how the identified features reflect the characteristics of Malaysian English.
Next is the methodology. This section tells us the steps taken in the process of completing this study. This part covers the background of our research participants, the instrument used in the process of this study, which are Spotify and Google Docs, the research procedure from start to finish. Basically, we listened to the whole podcast and identified which of the speech features of one agil that is distinct from the correct RP pronunciation. And lastly, the data analysis process, where we cross-checked with multiple sources on whether one agil speech features correctly displays how a Malaysian English should sound like. And so, the objectives of this study is to identify the pronunciation features produced by the guest speaker, to compare the identified pronunciation features with received pronunciation or RP, and lastly, to analyze how the identified pronunciation features reflect characteristics commonly associated with Malaysian English. Now, let's get on with the first part of the presentation, the vowels analysis. Firstly, what are vowels? Vowels are speech sounds produced without blocking the airflow through the vocal tract and distinguished by the tongue height, the tongue position, shape of the lips, as well as vowel length. Now, we're going to talk about vowel substitution, which is replacing one vowel sound with another. This often occurs when speakers replace unfamiliar English vowel sounds with vowels that are more familiar to their first language. In Malaysian English, vowel substitution usually occurs when replacing central vowels with full vowels or when unable to distinguish between short and long vowels. Firstly, one agil mentioned in minute 4, the reality on the ground. So, how did he pronounce it? He pronounced the word reality, which is supposed to sound reality with a schwa in IPA. Next, at minute 5:32, and then we incorporate it. So, one agil made the mistake with pronouncing it incorporated instead of incorporated. Lastly, at minute 15:49, when we travel by buses, instead of the IPA pronunciation of buses, he pronounced it as buses. Instead of the E sound, he pronounced a schwa sound, sis. Next is vowel shortening. According to Ahmad and colleagues in 2023, vowel shortening refers to a phonological process often seen in Malaysian English, where structurally long vowel sounds are replaced with shorter vowel forms and occur most frequently in the middle position of words. This linguistic occurrence can be strongly related to the speaker's native language background, especially Bahasa Melayu. At minute 2:46, he said, we also run our express bus services on the ground. The word services was pronounced as services instead of elongating the sound, which is supposed to sound services in the IPA. Next, at minute 7:59, the challenge is now for us to start replacing our asset. The word start was pronounced as start without elongating the R sound, which should sound like start in the IPA. And lastly, at minute 13:11, the idea of partnering with. So, the part where he displays this feature is in the word partnering, with the pronunciation of partnering instead of the long vowel R at the word partnering. Lastly, on the vowels aspect of one Agil's speech features is monophthongization, which is when a sound change occurs in which a diphthong becomes a monophthong, which can be seen as a vowel shift. This process happens by changing the complex vowel sound, also called gliding vowel, to a simple vowel sound, which is known as ungliding. So, at timestamp 303, he said operator to a national mobility enabler. Instead of enabler, the correct pronunciation in the IPA, he pronounced it as enabler. Next, at 10:44, the intention for Mara Liner and Mara Corporation to make the profit. He pronounced the word make as make instead of make in the IPA. And lastly, at minute 16:19, I'm going to arrive at my destinations. The word destinations was pronounced destinations by one Agil instead of the IPA pronunciation destinations.
Okay, now let's move on to our consonant analysis. Our consonant analysis consists of TH fronting, final consonant devoicing, and plosive omission. But before we get into that, I'll explain what are consonants. So consonants are letters that actually represent certain speech sounds which differentiates from vowel sounds in one fundamental way. This is the way they are pronounced. They have a greater constriction in the vocal tract, meaning there are more obstacles or challenges when trying to pronounce consonants instead of vowels. Okay, now let's move on to our first consonant analysis, which is the TH fronting. This is an occurrence where the phonological substitutions are seen. For example, the voiceless dental fricative th is changed into a t. In the timestamp 3:15, we found that the guest speaker said on the other hand. So instead of using the received pronunciation the other, he used the other. And in the timestamp 4:42, instead of using the demand, he uses the demand is very competitive. And the next example is in 9:06, where we need to work with what we have. Instead of using with, he uses with. Okay, for the next consonant analysis, it is the final consonant devoicing. This is a common process where the voiced consonants such as b, d, g, v, z becomes voiceless p, t, k, f, s when they end up at the final point of a word. So from our guest speaker, we found that in the sentence, we also run our expresses bus services on the ground. So instead of using services, he used services. He used s instead of z. Next is when we travel by buses. So instead of buses, he uses buses. And the next one is, and it's very important for travelers. Instead of using travelers, he uses travelers with an S. Okay, for the last consonant analysis that we found is plosive omission. So plosive omission actually occurs when a stop consonant is completely deleted during the speech. There are two types, intentional and unintentional. Unintentional happens when a speaker's native language does not have a certain English plosive sound. So they simplify it by dropping the sound altogether. Whereas in fluent everyday conversation, native speakers usually omit the sound to speak faster or smoothly. So in the distinction that we found that he mentions we do not have enough capital to inject. So instead of using the received pronunciation inject with a t, he uses inject, ending with a k. Next is while we come up with the brand. So instead of using the received pronunciation brand, he uses brand, ending with a n. Mara receives a certain amount of funds from, so instead of the received pronunciation funds with a d, he uses funds without the the.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Irfan bin Ahmad Fadilah, and today I will be presenting the suprasegmental speech features identified in our analysis, followed by the conclusion. So, what is suprasegmental features? Suprasegmental refers to speech features that extend over multiple sound segments. Supramental operates over words, syllables or phrases where you'll be able to find them in the tone, stress, rhythm, length or word junctures that accompany or are added over consonants and vowels. Basically anything that isn't a standalone sound. Okay, starting from the first feature of suprasegmental speech that we would like to analyze is stress. So as you can see, stress is typically used to emphasize a specific syllable in a multi-syllable word, and it is vital to ensure clarity, and it can also completely change the meaning of a word depending on where you put the stress when pronouncing the word. So as you can see on the slide, on the timestamp of 052, the received pronunciation is having, but the interviewee pronounced it as having. Moving on to the timestamp of 143, the received pronunciation is operational practicality. The interviewer pronounced this as operational practicality. Moving on to the last one, which is automations, which the interviewee pronounced as automations. Okay, moving on to the next suprasegmental feature that I would like to talk about today, which is rhythm. So rhythm is one of the main suprasegmental features of speech, which is the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in spoken language. It is important for the flow of the speech, timing, and also controls how words are understood and perceived. So the first example is thank you for having me. Stress, rhythm, you, for, and me are reduced and shortened. Thank you for having me. Whereas the interviewee pronounced it as equally. An example that I can give is thank you for having me. Moving on, I've been in many seats and many hats before. So the been, many seats, and many hats are stressed, whereas the interviewee pronounced it as I've been in many seats and many hats before. So each word received equal duration of stress. And the last one is not to mention with the Middle East conflicts. Stress, rhythm mentioned, Middle East and conflicts are stressed, whereas the interviewee pronounced it as not to mention with the Middle East conflicts. So the stress are relatively equal. Okay, as for the last suprasegmental feature, which is intonation. So intonation is the rise and fall of your voice pitch while speaking. It can clarify the intention behind words and convey emotional nuances, or it is the melody of a language used to communicate meaning. So the first example that I would like to show you today is the challenge now is for us to start replacing our asset. As for the interviewee, he pronounced it slightly rising in intonation on the word replacing. So he pronounced it as the challenge now is for us to start replacing our asset. Moving on, it will happen hopefully by early next year latest. So falling intonation on the words year and latest. Next year latest. Next year latest. So as for the interviewee, he pronounced it as by early next year latest. By early next year latest. And lastly, I think the absolute profitable roots is around 2. I think the absolute profitable roots is around 2. Whereas the interviewer pronounced it as I think the absolute profitable roots is around 2. I think the absolute profitable roots is around 2.
So, connected speech. What is connected speech? Connected speech refers to the natural changes that happen in words when spoken in everyday communication. Instead of pronouncing each word, speakers often omit, add, or modify sounds to produce more fluent speech. So for connected speech, there are 3 features that we are going to look into. The first one being yod collocations, the second one being elision, and the third one being intrusive r. Next, I will explain the connected speech feature identified in our interview, which is the first one, lack of yod collocations. So, firstly, yod collocations refers to a sound change where the y sound combines with a preceding consonant to produce a new consonant sound, such as ch and j. This process usually occurs in connected speech in received pronunciation because it makes pronunciation smoother and more natural. However, in our analysis, we found that the interviewee did not apply yod collocations. Instead, the y sound was pronounced separately, which is a common characteristic of Malaysian English. So the first example is at 3 minutes and 56 seconds. In the phrase, haven't you? In received pronunciation, this would normally be pronounced as haven't you, where the th and y sound combine to form ch. However, the interviewee pronounced it as haven't you, keeping the th and y sound separate. This shows that yod collocations did not occur. The second example is at 7 minutes and 20 seconds with the phrase would you. In received pronunciation, it is typically pronounced as would you, where the d and y combines into j sound. However, the interviewee pronounced it as would you, again producing the sounds separately instead of combining them. So this lack of yod collocations reflects a pronunciation feature commonly found in Malaysian English, where speakers tend to articulate words more distinctly instead of using the connected speech processes that are typical of received pronunciation. So next, the connected speech analysis for the feature lack of elision. So elision is the omission of one or more speech sounds, usually consonants or unstressed syllables, during rapid speech. So this process helps speakers produce speech more efficiently by reducing the articulatory effort. But however, in this analysis, the interviewee demonstrated lack of elision, meaning the expected sounds were not omitted and the words were pronounced in their complete forms. The first example is at 7 minutes and 11 seconds, where the interviewee says, I managed to pull out your financial reports for 2020 and 2024. So here, usually in received pronunciation, we would pronounce it as 2020 and 2024. However, the interviewee did not omit the th sound and pronounced it as 2020 and 2024. The same goes for the second example at 16 minutes and 11 seconds, where the interviewee says 15 or 20 minutes. Again, the interviewee did not omit the th sound and pronounce it completely as 20 instead of 20. So overall, these examples indicate that the speaker consistently articulated the words clearly without applying elision. So next, the connected speech analysis for the feature lack of intrusive r. Intrusive r is a connected speech feature where speakers insert an r sound between two words where the first word ends in a vowel sound and the next word begins with a vowel sound. This insertion helps create a smoother transition and improve the flow of speech. However, a lack of intrusive r means that the speaker does not insert this additional sound, keeping the words separate instead. So the first example, which is at 2 minutes and 55 seconds, where the interviewer says there is a need for us to. So in this example, the speaker produced the sound as for us, which usually in received pronunciation we would pronounce it as for us. But however, the interviewee pronounced it as for us, basically without inserting the r sound. And the second example, which is at 4 minutes and 6 seconds, where the interviewee says they have their own preferences. Usually in received pronunciation, we would pronounce their own as their own with the insertion of r sound. However, the interviewee did not insert the r sound, basically pronounced it as their own. And the final example, which is at 4 minutes and 36 seconds, where the interviewee says, where demand prefer us to be. Again, the interviewee did not insert the r sound, basically pronounced it as prefer us, where usually in received pronunciation we would pronounce it as prefer us. Prefer us. So overall, these examples show that the interviewee did not use the intrusive r sound.
So in conclusion, this study analysed the pronunciation features of guest speaker Wan Agil in DBFM 89.9, the Breakfast Grill podcast, by comparing them to received pronunciation. Using qualitative analysis, 4 categories were examined: vowels, consonants, suprasegmental features, and connected speech. The findings showed characteristics of Malaysian English. Vowel features included substitution, shortening, and monophthongization, while consonant features involved th fronting, final consonant devoicing, and plosive omission. Suprasegmental aspects covered stress, rhythm, and intonation, whereas connected speech showed a lack of yod coalescence, elision, and intrusive r. Despite differing from a received pronunciation, these features did not affect intelligibility and instead reflected the distinct phonological characteristics of Malaysian English.